This week, something amazing happened. Someone came to my class who I had never met before, but has been practicing with me for some time via my live stream subscription. And for a long time, I've really wondered, is it possible if someone just takes classes with me via my live stream, can they really learn what I'm teaching? When someone has met me before and then they take the classes, it feels like we're continuing a connection and a dialogue. But when it's somebody I've never met before, I wonder about it. Is it really possible? Well, this week, it was proved to me to be, in fact, true that someone can really learn what I'm teaching via my live stream classes, because this person had clearly taken in what I'm doing and made it their own and just gotten it on so many levels. And it really made me feel hopeful. It made me feel hopeful that the internet isn't a horrible thing, that digital technology can actually be a way to bring people together and share in yoga together and not just steal money from each other. So, I don't know, my faith felt restored and renewed this week, and I'm just excited that so many people might be benefiting from it. And if you want to see what it's all about, it's the Jay Brown Yoga live stream subscription. You can find it at jbrownyoga.com. Well, okay. Here we are in this asynchronous moment together. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Is this your first time here? If so, please come in, make yourself comfortable. Let me introduce you to everyone. Everyone, this is a new person. New person, everyone. How is everybody doing? I am very glad to be with you. I have a very fun talk to share with you today with a listener named Mary Jennings, who sent me an email, and I just decided to jump on and have a call with her. I'll tell you a little bit about that. But it's something I like to do now and again. I want to get to what is the real situations that people are in. And speaking of that, as I mentioned last week, I have a bit of fessing up to do. And if you're a new person and you're already wondering, what the hell is this? And when are we going to get to the interview? You can go ahead and skip ahead. But for everybody else, as I mentioned, I, some weeks back, decided to tell everybody how much money I made in 2018. I did that because I wanted to confront the taboos around money. And I wanted to face the stress that I have around it. And I was just curious to see what would happen if I broke that unwritten rule that says you're not supposed to talk about it. So I told everybody how much money I made. And then I wrote an essay about being honest about our numbers. And then since then, I actually finished my taxes. And what I discovered was that when I told everyone how much money I made, I was not accurate. You see, I took the net number from all of my online income and I added it to the gross number of all of my in-person teaching. And it's a little bit confusing because my in-person teaching, sometimes the gig will have expenses attached to it and sometimes it won't. So sometimes the gross is the net and sometimes the gross is not the net. And I just use the gross. So I said I made $35,000 off of online sales, and then I made $40,000 in in-person teaching for a total of $75,000. That's what I originally disclosed. But when I actually went in and looked at all of the expenses, the travel expenses, the accommodations and the food and the air flights and all the money that I have to spend to do the gigs, The number was not 40,000. The number was 29,000. So my actual number, my actual net income for 2018 was $64,000. $35,000 of that came from on-demand video products, live streaming subscription services, and podcast sponsorship. And then 29,000 came from in-person teaching. The other thing that I think is important to mention is that I did not do any teacher training in 2018. That the money I made was all off of one-off workshops or weekend intensives. I think I had 1 week-long thing, but all the rest were just basically workshops. So you don't make the same kind of numbers off of workshops as you do of 200-hour trainings. And my numbers are like okay, but they're not fantastic. I'm somewhere between 20 and 40 rather than, people who get like 60 or like 100 like Rachel Brathen or whatever. And I also went back and wanted to look at years prior, like when I had the yoga center in Brooklyn. I wanted to see if I could see what the trends were, what the trajectory was of it all. And what I saw was that for the first 5 years of the center, my net income was going up. I started around $25,000, and after 5 years, I had gotten up to $50,000 net. And that was fine for us because my wife was also working. We had a second income at that time. But once I renewed my lease at the center and I had that second 5 years, there was a steady downward decline. And there was one really bad year where we were at a loss because the teacher training numbers were bad. And when I was done, at the end, I had gone back down to 25,000. So at the peak, I had hit 50,000 net. And then at the beginning and the end, I was at $25,000 net income for myself. And part of my mistake is just that I'm ignorant when it comes to accounting. But I also think that on some subconscious level, I want to believe that I make more. that I want to believe as a yoga teacher, working as hard as I have over these years, that would mean that each year it would be growing or building, but there really has just been stasis, just enough. And that's okay by me, really. I didn't get into any of this for money. And I had a very big conversation with my wife about that very thing. Because after I got all honest about the numbers on these spreadsheets, I decided that I needed to show my wife the spreadsheets. And I've been with my wife for 13 years. I've always been the one in charge of our finances mostly. And she kind of knows, but she's never actually seen the numbers. But I just felt in this process of being honest about this, I want her, my partner, to know what the real situation is. So I showed her, and she freaked out. I don't think she realized how much debt we have. But the saving grace of the situation for me is this house. And longtime listeners will remember the saga that was me ending up being able to buy this house here in Pennsylvania. The miracle that happened, and you can go back and listen to those episodes and hear the incredible twists of luck and fate that allowed me to be living here. Well, in the 2 years that I've been here, with all the work that we put in fixing it, and with the upturn of the real estate market in this neighborhood, the value of this house has essentially been doubled. So if I were to sell this house, I would be completely out of debt. I would pay off the mortgage and all of our other debts. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to sell this house. We love this house. We want to grow old in this house. And if I want to keep it, then I am going to have to figure out a way to make more money. And why am I telling you all of this? I don't know. I mean, for one, I don't define my worth by how much money I make. I really don't. I really don't care. I just need to make enough money to meet my responsibilities. And I do have some faith. I have faith that I'm going to continue to find a way and that somehow I'm going to make enough money. I'm going to do it. That's going to involve a lot of continued work and the kind of honesty that I've been practicing with myself in these regards. So there you go. There's the full disclosure. I think it is important to note that $29,000 a year as a yoga teacher is right in there. It's probably in the median. I would say a lot more people probably make less. And there are some people who make more, but not a lot. And thanks be for my producer, Josh, and all of the online stuff that I've been doing, because without that, we wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing at all. I would really be in trouble. My wife would have had to have gotten another job somehow because we would have had to find a way to bring in more money. But fortunately, the digital sphere has opened up possibilities for not just me, I think for a lot of people. But as we've discussed some, and I will discuss more, the ways that we go about doing it, even online, doing these portals, like frankly, I don't know, if people reach out to me and they want me to participate in these online seminars. And a lot of times they feel fishy to me and there's all these requirements. Oh, I'm supposed to promote it. Part of me going on there is they're going to give me exposure. They're going to expose me to all these new people because there's other big name teachers who are part of the online teleconference. So it's supposed to give me exposure. And yet, in order to do it, I have to promote it on all of my outlets, all of my channels. And then when I go and look at how many Facebook followers this person has who's doing this online teleconference, it's like a fraction of how many followers I have. So it's presented to me that I'm going to get 50% of all the sales that I drive. So I'm going to get a promo code. I'm going to be an affiliate. And all the people that I send to the teleconference, I will get 50% of that. Seems fair, right? It's a 50-50 split. Except it's not really, because the person who set up the website, who set up the teleconference, who's the portal, they're getting 50% off of every teacher. You see, they're getting 50% from everybody, not just you. So they end up being the one who actually makes the most money off of all of these teachers who have all of these followings that they don't have. And the teacher training money is dirty, you guys. I mean, I hate to say it. I know a lot of people rely on it, and you got to do what you got to do, but the teacher training money is dirty. It's dirty. It's preying on industry weaknesses and people's insecurities and reptilian aspects to our brains. And I think we can do better. So I will continue to inquire as to how I can do that. And I will continue to be very transparent about that with you, because I think the yoga world is ripe for more. If you listened last week, we talked about sociocracy, and it does bear relevance to today's talk with Mary Jennings. Mary used to be from Pennsylvania, but she moved to a rural part of Michigan. You'll hear we talk about it. And she's opening a yoga center there, and she is employing a model that we discussed on this show a long while back. And really, it was just great fun to connect with her and hear about what she's doing and talk about some of the issues that I'm pointing to here. Before we get to it, let me say something to you about continuing education, and not continuing education credits or that. Just you as a person, as a practitioner, as a teacher, continuing to develop your understanding and your knowledge and your skill set? Well, as I was talking about, one of the things that's happening these days is online resources. And there's a lot of them out there. And one in particular is yogicstudies.com. You've heard me talking about yogic studies over the last few months. The founder of Yogic Studies, Seth Powell, was on the show a little while back. You should go listen to that. Seth is an incredibly gifted teacher who knows how to present the history and philosophies of yoga and Sanskrit studies in a way that's digestible, that doesn't make you feel stupid, but makes you feel like you have a clearer idea about where you stand in the pantheon of yoga learning. And one really cool thing is that as a listener of this show, you can get 15% off if you use promo code JBrown15. That's promo code JBrown15 for 15% off. Go to yogicstudies.com. Also, let me drop my stuff real quick. I'm going to be in Brazil, April 6th and 7th. I'm going to be at my spot in Allentown, Pennsylvania, May 4th. I'm going to be in Australia. Sydney is filling up. Gold Coast and Melbourne still got lots of space. May 25th through June 2nd. I'm going to be in Rhinebeck, New York at the Omega Institute, June 17th through the 21st. And I'm going to be back at the Feathered Pipe Ranch in Helena, Montana, August 17th through 24th. And that last one's one you might want to get on early. You can find out about all those gigs and more. You can listen to the archives of this podcast and read my blog and find all of my online yoga offerings. Everything can be found at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all, I think that's enough. I will touch base with you on the other side as usual and let you know about some things that are happening down the road. But for now, let's get to this conversation that I had with Mary Jennings.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey, Jay.
Hi, is this Mary?
Yeah.
How you doing?
You know, I'm doing really well. I should say I'm in my car because we have a snow day today at the university I work at.
Okay.
And we had 14, 18 inches of snow. So I crawled out of my house and I'm sitting in my car. So I hope the reception is okay.
I think it should be okay. We'll see. Do you need to try to do it another time? Do you think that would be better?
No, this is not totally unusual. It's unusual that the university closes, but it's not unusual that we have this much snow.
Well, that's funny because I was just sort of like looking at, a little bit of info that I could find on you. And I was like, oh, well, like a couple years ago, I moved from Brooklyn to Pennsylvania, and I thought that was like getting more rural. But you moved from Pennsylvania to where you moved, which seems way more rural.
Yeah, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. And it's a delightful place to live. And this morning I was just laughing to myself about what the day was going to be like and what my plan for this podcast was in reality. And it's all good.
So the plan isn't matching up to what's actually happening, eh?
Well, I mean, it's all good. I mean, we're talking, and so that was ultimately the plan, right? But I was going to get a room at the library, and it was going to be great internet connection and quiet, and instead I'm in my car, and that's okay too.
So you're driving in your car right now?
Oh, I'm not. There's no way I could drive this car. I'm plowed in the worst way. So
wait a second, but you're just sitting in your car as like a recording studio kind of thing?
Yeah, I have a 1-year-old in my house, so I can't guarantee a non-disruptive environment if I'm inside.
Oh, I understand that. Who's looking after the little one?
My husband.
Okay.
I just left him in there with the dog. He'll be fine.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Is the heat on? Are you warm enough in there? I got you
the heat is on.
Camped out in the car. Well,
it's good. I got coffee. I got my notes here just in case. And
what notes?
Yeah, I'm set up.
You got notes? You don't need notes. Maybe. I mean, it's funny that you say that. Be like planning to come on the podcast because I didn't send you any questions or anything, so you just wanted to like make sure you had some ideas to come with.
Yeah, my memory's not awesome, and so just like a couple things in case it comes up that I have quick access to.
Very cool. Well,
prepared.
Awesome. I mean, it's fun to have this chance to talk to you, Mary. I had been thinking, gosh, I'm talking to all these folks who are maybe like my generation more. Like just this week, I had Norman Blair on. And, he and I are like these 40-something-year-old guys who came into yoga in the early 90s. And we're talking about how much yoga centers are paying teachers. And I'm saying, well, but what about these small independent centers and stuff like that? And I thought after I finished the call with him, I was like, I got to really get another, I need to talk to somebody who's younger than me, who's opening a center right now. And I was thinking about that. And then your email dropped into my inbox. And there's just like a couple of things about it that really struck out to me. I love this. I'm gonna quote you. You wrote, you described yourself. You said, as I navigate the world as a millennial MBA, mother of 1-year-old, new yoga studio owner, side hustle to a day job in rural America. And I said, okay, that's exactly what I was thinking about, because it's not like some big city that you're in, that you're trying to do what you're doing. And you described yourself as a millennial and you had a business degree. So I was like, okay, let's talk to Mary. And here we are from out of the strata of the podcast world in voice to voice.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is so cool. I started listening to your podcast in October 2018 as the work for the studio that will be opening really went from like this idea to a reality. And so I just felt like I needed to be connected to a larger yoga industry conversation. And your podcast just really seemed to be checking all the boxes in terms of things that I was already thinking about and conversations I wanted to be having. So in a way, it felt very serendipitous to just find your podcast and find this conversation, and to be able to talk is super cool.
Yes. Well, all right then. Now, here's what I'm curious about, a couple of different things. So I guess the first thing I'm curious about is what are you doing in Michigan? You were here. You were in Pennsylvania, right?
I was in Pittsburgh, which has a super awesome yoga community if you ever get to make your way west in the state. And my background is in dance, so I moved to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I think you did a workshop there not too long ago.
I've been there,
they've got a ballet school there kind of for pre-professional training. So I moved in high school. My mom is still there, and made my way to Pittsburgh, and that's where my real formal yoga education started. And my husband and boyfriend at the time, migrated up to the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, in 2012 because he got a job at the university here, Michigan Tech, and I had just finished my yoga certification in 2011. So we moved up here, and I was just teaching a whole bunch of classes and ended up getting a day job in line with what my degree was, which was not expected, and a great welcome surprise. And so, we've just kind of settled in up here since then, probably to the chagrin of some of my family. We're pretty far away, but it's a great community. So that's what brought us to and is keeping us in Michigan.
That's what I was going to ask you about also, because I kind of read something that you had written. I think it might have been on that crowdfunding page about learning something about community there. And so I'm curious, what's that? What was that move like from Pittsburgh to where you are now? What was that like for you?
So originally, I'm from upstate New York, about 4 hours north of the city, right at the the base of the Adirondack mountain range, in a little town called Queensbury. And so moving from Pittsburgh to the UP in a way felt like a homecoming, because growing up in a more rural area, I couldn't wait to get out and to move and to be on my own. And moving from Pittsburgh, which is a really wonderful, I can't say enough good things about that city, to a rural place at first, like, had a lot of, it brought up a lot of feelings that I hadn't felt since being a teenager, of like, oh my God, I live in the middle of nowhere. I'm, kind of like a get me out feeling. And it was not at all about the community. It was just a filler feeling of being very far away from we're 2 hours from Starbucks, for crying out loud. We're in the middle of nowhere. Which is charming. And so learning about community, when you are 2 hours from Starbucks or Target or any of the other things that we often think of as being kind of right at our fingertips, it's amazing how a small community like this, where we're fortunate enough to have a university. So there is a little concentration of people in the town, and a lot of the businesses are local, because it's hard to convince chain stores to move up this way. We're like way out of the supply chain, so to speak. And so, folks really come out to support each other. And we live in a place with such extreme weather that also is, I think, a community builder. Like, it is such an equalizer of experience when everybody has to deal with the blizzard, when everybody has to deal with, schlepping through the snow and shoveling out your car. And, yeah.
How's the weather there today? You said it's snowing?
Yeah, the university closed because we've been in a blizzard for 2 days, which is unusual for the university to close. But, I got in my car, shoveled myself into the car, and I saw one of my neighbors walk by on snowshoes, just walking by on snowshoes, like down the middle of our street. And I smiled to myself, because it's like so extreme, right? But people just live in it and enjoy it. And that's refreshing.
Well, I've always felt, I grew up on the West Coast, where there's like no seasons at all, essentially. And then I moved to the East Coast, and I always felt like, oh, well, I kind of like the cycle where you have to earn your spring. You know what I mean? You have to do some shit and get through the winter. And then you get to have spring, and you like shed your coat, and the sun hits your skin, and it's like I always felt like a new appreciation for that cycle when you have to go through some winter.
Yeah, I love living in seasons. And now I should say that, and probably 2 days ago, if you asked me the same thing, I was not quite so cheery about it.
I know. I'm all romanticizing it, but I'm not the one who had to shovel my ass to the car.
Yeah, well, no. So, being inside is hard. And it's, as a yoga teacher, as somebody who has a practice, it's a real... It's a real practice in self-care in the winter. Living with the seasons, and I should, as a disclaimer, say I am not like the most outdoorsy person. I have friends here that are way more like into the snowshoeing and the cross-country skiing, and they get out in the winter. I put on snow boots and I walk up and down my street, and I'm very happy with that. But when you're inside so much, when you don't get that, access to the sun and the fresh air, and the cabin fever sets in, you really have to get creative. You have to have a lot of tools in your toolbox of how you take care of yourself to mentally get through the winter, and how, you take care of your family and each other, and everybody, again, is kind of going through it. And there's a communal aspect to mentally getting through the winter as well. Saunas are actually really popular up here. We kind of live in Little Finland, and that Finnish habit of how you are in a sauna, how you go into a sauna and you build it into your day, is very much a part of a lot of folks' lives up here.
That's
for
so
that
interesting.
reason.
I saw that, like you were talking about the studio and it was going to be designed in a sort of Finnish way. And I've been to Finland like 4 times.
Awesome.
And yeah, and you nailed it. Have you been to Finland before? Like that's exactly what, first of all, everybody
I have not.
but everybody has a sauna there. You're right. It's like built into their culture. Like everybody does it. And, but just that design that you were like finished, clean design, like that's what the studio I taught at looked like.
Oh, I'm so envious. No, I've never been to Finland. So the UP and the Keweenaw Peninsula where we are living is like a little sister city to a city in Finland. A few years ago, I think in 2014, we had FinFest here, where I believe the Finnish Prime Minister came over. Like it's there was a big Finnish migration here at the in the early 1900s to work in the mines and to work in some of the industry that was going on. For a brief moment in time, the city of Calumet, Michigan, which is a little farther north of us, was like as big as Detroit. It was booming. And so we had a whole bunch of migrant workers, and that Finnish culture, they found their way over here, and they probably looked around and said, this looks like home, we'll stay. And so we've inherited a lot of the cultural aspects of Finnish life into the community we live in now.
Well, Finland's a pretty amazing country. Like their educational system is like the best in the world. And like
we could have a whole nother podcast.
So about that. I've been very intrigued because, I've just been really curious. I know you're kind of political too. Well, maybe we'll get to that. But like, I just was sort of thinking about, having been traveled a lot this last year. So like looking at how other countries do things, like when you get to travel and see, you're like, wow, well, like they do this really kind of what would be considered entirely radical thing here, but they have the best outcomes. They're at the top of all the statistics.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Like I know during the school day, kids get like all these breaks in the school day. They'd take lessons for like 45 minutes and give a long break, like all day long.
They have no homework. They decide what they want to study.
Amazing.
A lot of times. It's like, I don't know. I don't know all the details. I don't know enough about it, but when I was staying there, like the people I stayed with had 2 kids, and I would just sort of like be asking about their schooling, and then I read some stuff. So anyways, what a trip. Who'd have known that there's a sister city to Finland in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan?
I know. I certainly. So being from the East Coast, my education of the Midwest was very limited, and I really didn't know that the UP was a thing before I was moving here. My husband said he got a job in Upper Michigan, and I'm not even sure if I thought about the Mitten. I just thought of it as one landmass that we'd be moving to, and so it's definitely been a process of discovery. Which is, again, it's been so delightful to find this little pocket of the country that I had no idea existed. And it's filled with not only beautiful nature and access to the outdoors, but like lovely people and opportunities for me to grow professionally and
we'll
a yoga studio too. Like who would have thought, right?
What's the political bent there? Is it like a left-leaning place or a right-leaning place, or do you know?
Well, I know. We have a university.
That's right.
So
See, me too.
Automatically,
I live in the neighborhood of the university here, and I live in this little pocket of blue, but all around is kind of very red.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah, okay. We found the little blue beacon, didn't we?
I need the blue beacon, Jay.
Me too. I didn't really plan that, but that's just how it happened.
Yeah. We certainly didn't plan it, but being a part of a university town, I don't think we'd live too far outside of town.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then you mentioned also something about like a day job that you've gotten there. Have you been doing other kinds of work? What's your day gig?
Well, my day gig is an arts presenter. So I'm the director of programming at the university's Performing Arts Center here, which came out of like 2 years of me teaching a whole bunch of yoga and youth dance classes at the community center. A job opened up, and through kind of a series of strange events, I landed over in my home in the art center with some great folks. And I love it. I feel every day I'm so lucky to have a job in line with my dance degree that I never thought would be useful in the Upper Peninsula.
Who'd have thought? Everybody was like,
Yeah.
oh, if you leave New York, you'll never get to work, right? And then you find like a way better gig probably.
Oh my God, if you leave New York and you go to a small town with a unique skill set,
Yeah.
I mean, people are like, oh, you do this. Awesome, come work for us, because you don't get a lot of folks who specialize in, dance in Houghton, Michigan.
Oh, awesome. Well, what's the yoga scene like in Houghton, Michigan?
The yoga scene is all over the place. So when I moved here in 2012, I taught out of the recreation center, and there were two sisters who'd been teaching there, running classes forever and ever, and that was kind of it. There's also a woman who owns her own studio in town, but like, I understand she does her own thing. She's got an intro class, and if you don't go to the intro class, you can't take any of the other classes. So it's hard to kind of get in to that studio if it doesn't fit with your schedule. And I'm not knocking that. Like she's got her own reasons for doing it, and she's got a group of people that really love it. But
I respect that. Put some barrier of entry to it, and she doesn't need to do anything different. That's cool, but that makes it hard for you if you got a little one and you're trying to get to a class.
Yeah, so that was kind of the institutional yoga in Houghton, and since 2012,
That's it. So there's only 2 centers. Is that what you're saying?
There's that one center, and then it's the the university's recreation center that does yoga next to Zumba, next to spin.
I see.
And there are all these teachers that are teaching out of, this community center in this open room and with this population. None of it is centralized. But there are like a dozen teachers, at least that I know of. So there are all these teachers and no studio. And for a while, everybody was kind of just waiting for someone to, myself included, just waiting for there to be a studio in town. We're a university town. Why don't we have a studio? And so finally, for my own selfish needs, I was like, I need a studio for my own practice. and so that's how the studio that we're building has come to be. Because otherwise, no, there's not another studio.
All right, so you're taking it on, and I noticed another cool thing, well, not a coincidental thing maybe, which is that, when I started my center in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the only way I was able to do it was through an SBA loan I got for $15,000. That's the money I started it with. And you
Awesome.
were that was like your number. You were like, oh, we got a 5,000. We're trying to get 10 more. You were like looking for about the same to start your center. And I was like, that was the number I needed. That's all I needed to get going.
Yeah. And in Brooklyn, that's really surprising to me.
It was a different time in Brooklyn. I had like a little other money, but I did it on the cheap, If you're not like, I wasn't making a Finnish spa environment like you, but
okay, let's not oversell what we're doing here.
But okay, so talk to me about, you decide you're gonna make this yoga center in downtown Houghton, Michigan, because there's a bunch of teachers around. There's no center, and you think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah. So the long story short is, back when I first started my day job, I was told it would be temporary. And so I was thinking, what am I going to do after this interim period being a professional? And so this was back in, 2014, started talking with a friend about maybe opening a yoga studio, and hopped around, started a conversation with this person. It evolved to a conversation with another person. And so that spun us into the summer of 2018, where I found my business partner, who I'm opening this studio with, and started building some buy-in from a handful of community teachers. I knew that I didn't want to do this if I didn't have, and I had two people in mind. I said, if these two teachers aren't on board, then it's not going to work for me. They're teachers that are trusted in the community, that have been teaching here for a long time, that also have a following. And I knew that I'm not going to be the primary teacher here. It's about opening a community space, not just a place for, Mary Jennings to teach yoga. So I got the buy-in from those teachers, and then
now wait a second. I have to ask you about that. Because first of all, I think that is a really smart idea, because that's what I've talked about. That's not what I did. I did the previous model, which is a charismatic man usually, or like some charismatic senior teacher opens up a place on their rep, Yeah. And so the idea that there'd be community buy-in, I think, is really smart. But now what does that mean when you say buy-in? Are they actually co-owning, or they just agree that they would want to come teach there?
Well, it started as an agreement to teach. If I do this, will you come and teach at the studio, at least a class? I needed that initial level of, we're on board to do this with you. But what that's turned into, and kind of the alternate business model that we'll be working with, is where each instructor is co-leasing the space from us, or maybe co-leasing isn't the right word, but we're using a salon business model where in a hair salon, each stylist rents out their own chair. So each teacher will rent out their own class for like a real nominal fee. But what that does for us is it ensures that we can cover all of our fixed costs. We can cover rent, we can cover our utilities and any other monthly fees, because we have a guarantee of X number of classes, which means teachers are going to be paying for the space at that time. And then they'll get to recoup, all the walk-in revenue themselves.
Oh my gosh. See, I didn't know that that's what you're doing, Mary, but I think that's so interesting and smart. And in a way, what's really great about that is it's not like you're going into a place where there's these teachers who've been doing these own things. I saw you were teaching at the Karate Institute in the summer, right? So
Yeah.
So you have all these people doing that, and then if a center came in and was sort of doing it and not in the other way, it's almost like you would maybe just be like taking that away from people. But in this scenario, because you're doing it where they still are in charge of it, like they still have ownership, because they're basically getting just a better equipped space for a very small fee.
That's 100% right. And what that required was, because originally I was really hesitant to pitch this idea to teachers. I can't take full credit for it. I was working with a woman in town who is a business owner already, and she has a long-standing meditation practice, really wanted to see some kind of a wellness center like this open up in town. And so she and I were meeting for a while, and she was the one that pitched this salon idea. And at first I thought, no, that's outside of what yoga teachers are used to hearing. I was really trying to figure out how the numbers for the studio would work in that old model of like, you get a base rate of X amount of dollars and then a per student rate of, 2 or 3 or 5, whatever that number is. Because that was what I was used to in Pittsburgh, and that's what I thought was kind of industry standard. But, and I didn't think that teachers would be into paying, because there's risk involved.
Right.
If you sign up to pay X amount of dollars for a studio space for a class, and you get 2 people, right? And that's the risk that they run. And so it required a lot of conversation and really building trust with the teachers that I didn't know, as well as leaning on the trust of the teachers that I already had that good relationship with, to say, listen, this is not I'm not quitting my day job to do this. It's not about, as the studio owner, recouping lots of money from this. It's really just about like, we all need a yoga space. Like, we're ready for it. The community's ready. And this is the way that the doors get open to the yoga studio in Houghton, Michigan, because otherwise we couldn't figure out a way to make the dollars work. And go ahead.
No, I think it's really smart. And I just wanted to reiterate what you were saying about, like, there's this risk. And I think that's where teachers would get nervous. And I think that it's smart that a lot of times it does make more sense to somebody who already has maybe a little bit of a following, or people who are already coming to their classes somewhere, because they feel a little bit more confident that those people are going to show up, especially at the nice new place.
Yeah.
But I think it ends up being in the best interest of the teachers too, because the other thing is the burden's all on you to have to try to figure it out, to take all the money in and then dole out their share. And in this scenario, they're in charge of their own money, right? Do they get to choose how much they want to charge for their class, or does everybody agree about what that's going to be?
Yeah, so everybody is agreeing on what the class fees are.
Right, that would be weird if some person like underpriced the other teachers. That would be weird. If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of Jay Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.